Okay, so Wednesday today. Yesterday was kind of a slack day. I went out and I picked up some stuff and then I just lounged around. I did put the doors on. I'm not 100% happy with the alignment. There's just a it's slightly dropped. You see, look at this body line here. The door is partway open, but it is slightly dropped there. I'll see if I can correct that when I get the latch assemblies in. I pulled out my fenders. This was the fender I banged up, a couple of weeks ago, and ended up just repriming. This fender I hadn't looked at since last fall, and annoyingly enough, I noticed a scratch on it, so I'll have to deal with that. When I did this fender for that scratch, I ended up repriming the whole fender. I'm hoping that won't be necessary with this one. I also did notice that I'm going to need some touch-up. I don't think that anything needed to be done on this rocker, but unfortunately, or annoyingly, the paint must not have been adhering, or primer must not have been adhering very well, and it flaked off right here. So I'm going to just lightly sand that and mask everything off, and as I put a bunch of body oil on it. But I'll sand this. Hopefully I can just hit that lightly with some primer. I'll get my little primer gun. And actually no, I won't. I'll use my proper primer gun because that's the one I'm used to using. And clean that up. Hopefully this isn't an adhesion problem. Once again, rocker was replaced, and I've got that EDP primer that was not stripped off on this one. So hopefully it's not indicative of an adhesion problem in any case. Otherwise, I think we're good to go. I might do some masking on this thing to protect the fresh blue paint. Certainly at least I'll want to throw a tarp over it, or plastic over it, clean plastic. My objective today basically is clean up the scratch on this fender, clean up that bit on the rocker there. And I really wanted to get the back sides of these fenders cut in with paint, and that way either tomorrow or on Friday I can put these fenders on and set everything up to do the final paint job on this cab, and then that's done. No more painting, no more major painting. And at that point, hopefully I can get into my final assembly of this thing here, putting the engine and transmission back in. I do want to clean up that transmission somewhat. I'll just take it out and power wash it, and I'll just hit it with some primer. I think I'll have to maybe I'll go down and I'll get some black Nason primer, and I'll hit this thing with that, because I think I'm running out of that SPI black epoxy primer. But in any case, that's at least a ways away. Okay, so I went and I sanded this out with 400 grit and blended it out fairly well where the paint was flaking off, and it doesn't look like it was showing any signs of flaking off anywhere else except exactly where that was. So I'm gonna have to prime this. This is gonna be a pain in the ass just from one little 2-inch patch of metal. I'm gonna have to mask off most of this dumb door frame. Yeah, I was just thinking, hey, could I tape a bag around it and shoot in a bag? But no, it won't work. Anyways, I've also got 2 other spots on this fender. There was a lot of bug guck on this thing from it sitting from last fall, and what I thought was bug guck turned out to be avoiding the primer, so I had to do that spot. Feathered that out with 400 grit. Same again with this one, feathered it out with 400 grit. So I will probably mix all of like 1 or 2 ounces of primer I should say, primer. It's called primer. Gray stuff is primer. And spray these couple of spots here. I'll probably blend it out for at least 4 inches around each of those patches. I can't really do that well with this piece, but pain in the ass. Would have been better off if I would have noticed that before I put the door on. I'll see what I can do. I'll bag everything off. I shouldn't get too much overspray. and anything on the clear I'm hoping will polish out anyways, but I'm going to mask it. You know, obviously mask along the mask line here, and then I'll probably mask back to here and back, you know, like, so I have a fairly good thing. It's a problem with this stuff all being cut in now and noticing this chip now. Anyways, I'm gonna get to it. Actually, I'll have some lunch then I'll get to it. Okay, so I've masked off some of the areas just so I can spray this little patch with some primer. This might be getting, you know, overkill here, but or may not be enough. But it's all a learning curve for me, so I am going to see what happens. Anyways, next shot will be everything primed, including that fender. I'm gonna get that sand over around those areas that I was touching up on with some 400, and that way I can overlap a fair bit. You know, need be, I might end up giving the whole fender. What I'll do is each wear through spot will probably get at least 2 to 3 coats of epoxy primer, but if I have enough left over, I'll give it an overall coat. Okay, this turned out okay. I don't see the sanded out spot too much anymore, but I massively screwed up on this fender when I went to go and respray the entire thing. I went and I did the touch-ups nicely, and then I went and I did the full respray, and I sprayed it insanely heavy before I noticed. And I guess it goes to show you that you should start in the spots that are more obvious up here rather than at the bottom where you don't notice that it's running badly until later. So I don't know what I'm going to do to salvage this. I might end up resanding it and doing it all over again. I'll see how bad the runs are in any case. So that kind of wrecked my plans to cut in the backsides tonight, but I'll get this resolved today, and we'll go from there. I'm not going to be grumpy about it. Shit happens. Okay, I tried sanding out the runs, and it was still too gloopy. Well, it wasn't cured. That's usually the correct technical term. It still wasn't cured, and so I said, well, screw that. And I took some lacquer thinner and I stripped all the new primer off, and I'm going to prime it again, but I'm going to let it thoroughly dry off. The base layer of the primer was from last fall, so there's no way it wasn't fully cured. Anyways, I'm going to leave this for an hour or so, then I'm going to come back out and I'm going to spray it down, and that'll be it for tonight. This goes to show you really should be really careful about what you're doing, because that cost me one whole evening. Okay, so I resprayed this fender after stripping it, and I can't seem to not lay it on heavy with this stuff, but it's not as bad as it was. It's way better. One little run right here, that should be sandable out. And I thought I saw another one somewhere along here. Oh, it was somewhere where yeah, that's right. It was right up here at the front where right there, where I was overlapping some shots when I shot the front, and then I shot this, and that obviously caused me some grief. I got to remember how to, you know, when I'm doing it, do the key part first, and then, you know, the less important part second. That way you can if you run it, it's going to be in a spot that doesn't matter, because this would be covered by the grill. Anyways, I'm done. It's well past 9 o'clock tonight, probably closer to 10, and I'm going to go in.